But I'm Kelly. I'm a dietitian here at the hospital. I cover primarily critical care, but I also do the Healthy Heights classes with Tiffany. We got together when the Healthy Heights program started, and one of the things we did was we kind of took cardiac rehab classes and brought it to Healthy Heights, but now we've kind of expanded those classes to cover My Plate and sweets classes, and then our newest class, which is next week, is going to be Halloween, and so I hope y'all can come. And I do apologize that I was running a little late, had housework today, so that's not fun. But one of the things is I hope y'all can see my objects on the table. Is there some guidelines, just knowing what your portion should look like. There's one dice, there's a deck of cards, there's my dog's baseball that he let me borrow, a Postit note, a dental floss, and 3 dice. And one of the things, does everyone have something to write with? Or one of these things, all of these objects are going to match one of the next 6 pictures I put up. So one of those objects is what your grains and your rice and your fruits should look like. And if y'all want to take a guess at it, I know we have a prize. It's just the prize isn't here, but we will get it to you. We have a little measuring spoon prize. And then there's your meats. And I'm not a big meat eater, but I had to find a meat photo that had a lot of the different meats in it to represent. But then there's the cheeses, and unlike the meat photo, I could just jump into this picture and eat all of those, or try at least most of them. But then there's your fats, things like the Miracle Whips and the butters. And things like the desserts, because that's also a little goodie picture, is that every now and then dietitians get, oh, you probably don't eat sweets at all, but you can work sweets into a healthy diet. And then the chocolate is different, which was kind of surprising when I was actually doing the portion control, was that I did find out that chocolate was completely different than the desserts. But y'all want to know the answers about our objects there on the table? The rice and the pasta, the fruits, about the size of the baseball. And your meats is about the size of the deck of cards, but also a general size could be the palm of your hand. One of the things that I hear people say about that, the palm of your hand size, is that it's not fair because maybe their husband's taller than they are. They don't have a bigger palm, and you're a little on the smaller side, and so you have a smaller palm. But at the same time, he probably needs more calories than actually you do. And then the cheese would be the 3 stacked dice, which I just don't think that's very fair.
The cheese would be the Postit note. This was about the same size.
I was like, the Postit note. I'm like, it's like, I want it to be the Postit note. But I think they do it more as a measurement of like that block cheese, if you're like slicing off a slice of cheese, instead of looking at it as the prepackaged. The prepackaged cheeses, those don't come in single servings. So each one that's wrapped up, that's going to be a single serving for it. And then your fats are going to be about the size of a dice. And then your Postit note is actually going to be your dessert. And that way, if you're having a brownie, you can have a 2 by 2 inch brownie, or you can have a cookie about the size of a Postit note. The one thing I've told about myself is that someone called me out in one of our classes. It wasn't here at the hospital, but he was like, what about this size Post-it note? And he had like 3 sizes of Post-it note. One of them was like double this size, and one of it was the miniature version, but it's just a regular size Post-it note. And then it's like, it's hard to translate. It's got that angle to it, so just making sure that it's like a small slice. And the chocolate's about your dental floss or your regular dental floss. But I wanted to be sure to get to, the information we passed out that has a coupon for the Country Crock, and then it also has a coupon for the Promise. And I seem to think these coupons are good until the end of December. So if you haven't tried those butters, you might try, that might be a way for you to buy some and be like, do I like it, or next time I won't spend it on it. But the 10 simple steps, this is through one of the dietetic programs I'm a member of. It's the Sports Cardiovascular and Wellness Nutrition Program. And they send out little flyers about what they recommend, and they try to put it with 10 steps. And I thought this would be an interesting one to give out, since we were kind of doing an overview of all of the classes, because it got that overview to it. One of the first things is like knowing your serving sizes. That can really help out. And if it's like a butter or oil you're cooking with, is to measure it out and pour it in your pan, or if it's like rice is my favorite thing, is I didn't realize like it's a half a cup of uncooked rice. And I didn't realize until I actually measured it out and put it in there, and when I got it out of the pan after it had finished boiling, how much rice that actually was. But it's easy, that's an item that is kind of easy to overdo if you don't measure it out. The next one is watching out for those saturated fats. The saturated fats and the trans fats are going to be the least heart healthy. And the more heart healthy fats are going to be like the monounsaturated fats and the polyunsaturated fats. Those are going to be things like avocados and nuts, and nuts can range from the almonds and peanuts to walnuts, it just depends on like what you like. But also at the same time, it's watching out for the salt in it. Primarily that's the problem with it. But one of the recommendations for the saturated fat, because one of the problems they've had with saturated fat is that it just remains in butter and mayonnaise type products. And so it's getting less than 10% of your calories from that item. And then if you're at higher risk for a cardiovascular or cardiac event, is to limit it to about 7%. But also making half your plate fruits and vegetables, and that kind of brings back the My Plate. If any of y'all came to the My Plate class, it's half of your plate's fruits and vegetables. The other fourth is a grain, and the other fourth is a meat source. And then it shows the milk as like a dairy, as like a glass of milk that you drink. But it doesn't exactly have to be just a glass of milk. It could be like a yogurt type item or a parfait. But getting half of your plate fruits and vegetables is a big thing. And one of the ways that is easy to do that is starting it at breakfast. Last night I did a class and I was like, we'll get 5 fruits and vegetables through the day. That can increase your fiber. Well, one of the things was I was like, it's hard to think of getting like 5 fruits and vegetables through the day. And I started counting. I was like, well, I had fruit in my cereal, and I had 2 vegetables at lunch because I had a vegetable plate. And then I had a banana as a snack, and that night I went home and I ate a plum. And so I actually got 5, but sometimes it's the number that kind of gets to be the confusing item. And then also taking the easy route. There's things that have been pre-prepared for us, like in the Kroger section you can find the watermelon or the pineapple pre-chopped, and sometimes I think I found it in Walmart, they have the carrots and the celery that's pre-sliced, and it really helps out. But also you can do things like the freezer fruits and vegetables, and one of the things with the freezer fruits and vegetables is being sure it's in its raw form. When they put a sauce in there, that's when the sodium content's going to go way up. Then also eating less salt. I knew I'd end up getting here because it always seems like my conversation goes back to that lower salt, eat more fiber, eat less fat type thing. But knowing your saltier ingredients, like MSG is going to be a saltier ingredient, and ingredients that have sodium listed, like a sodium nitrate, are going to be a saltier ingredient. And then making it at home, making it from the fresh food items, that's an easier way to know how much salt you put in it instead of going out to a restaurant and being like, sometimes people start making their food at home, and they'll be like, you weren't kidding about restaurants being higher in salt, because they can taste the salt when they go out to the restaurant. Because I know it's something that happened to me. I got used to cooking at home, and I'll go and visit my family, and we'll go out to eat, and it's like, oh, that tasted really salty, but it's just, getting used to a different type flavor, but also being creative. And one of the things with being creative is choosing a different herb or a different spice that you might like to try. Like I love rosemary in the fall and the winter months. And one of the things with rosemary is it has a really fresh smell, so it leaves the kitchen smelling good. But at the same time, when it's summertime, I might eat a little bit of Mexican food or Spanish-inspired food, and that's when I'm going to pull out the cilantro. I'm not going to do much cilantro during the warmer months. But there may be a spice that you're like, I tried it with this recipe, I really liked it, and so maybe the next time you bake chicken, you'll use it on that chicken, or you'll add it to that recipe. One of the things is watching for those solid fats and those added sugars or the added salts. One of the things with them, they encourage the nutrient-dense food as opposed to those heavier fat foods or heavier salted foods. One example that your handout will actually provide is the cola. The 12-ounce cola really surprised me because it had an equivalent of 12 packets of sugar, or about 7 teaspoons of sugar in it, and I was like, that is really a surprise when you start putting it into sugar packets. And then also going lean with the protein, I was trying to figure this picture out. I got this picture from Google Images. I want to say it's cilantro or it's Italian parsley that they have laid it on, but I thought it really looked good. But chicken is one of your good lean meats. Turkey is one of your good lean meats. Seafood is another lean meat, like salmon, tilapia. One of the things is we say that seafood's a good meat for your body, but you go almost backwards in it because shrimp's not exactly so good. Shrimp contains a lot of cholesterol in it, so it's just being sure not to do it every night or at the same time at every meal. And one of the things that's easy is when you get those frozen bags of shrimp, you pop it open, it's easy to pour out shrimp, and it just kind of hurt my feelings a little bit that like 7 shrimp was a serving size, because I could probably eat a whole package of shrimp by myself if I was completely honest with y'all, but it wouldn't be the most heart-healthy thing that I would do during the day. But also keep it lean when you're cooking it. Choose cooking methods like baking, grilling, roasting, even stir-frying in moderation can be an option. And as opposed to frying or breading it before you cook it, that helps out. And then vary your protein. There's a lot of different options. Just to start with, the chicken and the turkey and the fish are great options, but also there is red meat. One of the things with red meats is they're going to be a higher fat item. A lot of times the marbling of the meat makes it a more expensive meat, but at the same time it makes it a higher fat item that's not so healthy. So being sure if you get a ground beef, I think it encourages to pick out the 93.7 ground beef. From my own experience, it was hard to cook with. So if you go with like an 80-20 version or just a regular ground beef, just being sure to drain it or dab it with a napkin, because that takes some of the greasy effect from it. And also making at least half your grains whole. That really helps out. One of the things when I started teaching the cardiac rehab classes was you had white bread and wheat bread. And then they went from that to whole wheat bread, and then they went on to multigrain bread. And one of the differences that is there is those jumps that it makes. It increases in fiber. And it's not a real large increase in fiber, but it increases enough that it makes it a little, gives it a little more texture to it. And some people will be like, I love multigrain bread, and then in the same hand, they'll be like, I don't like multigrain bread, I'm just going to do my regular white bread. But maybe they choose a pasta or a rice instead to get a fiber source from. But one of the things in your handout is also in the tip number 8. They include, I think it's about 5 or 6 recipes in there. And one of the thing they've done with these recipes is they've changed out the butter or the oil that they've used, and they've used country crock or the I can't believe it's not butter in replace of it. And that's something you can do, like you can do that at home too with your own recipes. Instead of just going for a stick of margarine and adding it to the pot, you replace it with the I can't believe it's not butter type margarine that saves you a little bit on the saturated fats and the trans fats. But that's where that coupon comes from, is they are promoting those different type butters. But also being aware of food safety. This is a big thing, especially when you cook meals for family members or for friends. Being sure that you're being clean with what you're doing. You wash your hands, your utensils are cleaned, things are kept separate, like you're not, it happens more in a food service operation, but you're not cutting your meat on the same board that you're cutting your vegetables on, that it's kept completely separate. Also, that you're cooking it, that things get to the right temperature. I know that it almost becomes like old wives' tale, is that my grandmother cooked it for an hour and a half, my mom cooked it for an hour and a half, so I'm going to heat the oven to 350 degrees and I'm going to cook it for an hour and a half, but not just eyeballing that it's been cooked thoroughly if you're not sure about if it takes like 30 minutes or if it takes an hour. A food thermometer can come in really helpful. And then also chilling it, not keeping a food item out more than 2 hours at room temperature, and make sure that your refrigerator stays at or below 40 degrees. That can really help out. And then also moving more. Exercise, one of the things with the exercise is you can have a healthy diet, you can watch your portions, but if you're not getting exercise too, it doesn't help. Those two things go hand in hand. It is recommended to get about 2.5 to 5 hours of exercise, depending on the intensity that you're doing it at. Is for moderate exercise, you go 2.5 to 5. For more vigorous type exercise, you go 1.5 to 5. And one of the things, I have free weights at home. I know myself when it comes to work, if I'm working 5 days a week, I'm not going to want to leave the hospital and go to the gym. So I have free weights, that way I can lift weights at home, but also I do yoga, and so I kind of keep it mixed in there, so being sure that you also get a little bit of strength training in that type of exercise. But one of the things I was scared that, or not exactly scared that would come up, I knew that we would get the question about how does scan compare to my plate. And one of the things, I added the tips of my plate in here. Mainly it's half your grains are whole, so they went together. Half of your plate is fruits and vegetables. It went together. Also getting, one of the differences was my plate promotes getting skimmed 1% milk, drinking water, but also balancing your calories. A couple of weeks back, I was using choosemyplate.gov as a reference site, and I realized when I was working on this class that choosemyplate.gov does not work right now with the things that are going on with the government. So before I was going to tell y'all about the choosemyplate.gov being able to use it, I'm sure it will be back up and working, but as of today, it wasn't working. And then also the varying of protein sources, encouraging those lean meats from the SCAN program, like the chicken and turkey, and cutting the fatty edges off, and the fish, but also watching out for those solid fats, those sugars and added sugars, added salts, and then being active. They both have one of their last points with be active, or move more, and so that is one of those points that just kept on showing up, just like the fruits and vegetables and the whole grains. But some of the other suggestions I actually did on my own. Well, I actually looked up the references to make sure that I gave you the right material, but I thought about my own life, like what type of suggestions I had from what I personally do. One of the things is reading food labels, and it might be that you're reading it for salt, you're reading it for fat content or cholesterol, but also at the same time just checking to make sure you have the serving size right. But here on this is, at the top is going to be your serving size. And if you know your calorie level, it's right there at the top too. But your sodium content too, for the heart patients here at the hospital, since they have the heart failure encouragement, a lot of times if a patient comes in heart failure, they'll be put on a 2,400 milligram sodium diet. And sometimes when you go around and you educate them, it's like, well, it's not fair because I have to be on a low salt, but my family member who doesn't have this doesn't have to be on low salt, or they can add all the salt they want. But the average person is only needs about double what their restriction is. And then for the total fat, it's on a 2,000 calorie diet, it would be about 50 to 75 grams. And then it would be about less than 3 grams per serving for the saturated fat. And then one of the things that I found interesting in the material was the total carbohydrate number, because it was in heart material, was that if you have problems with triglycerides, you don't want to get anything that's over 30 grams of total carbohydrate or over 15 grams of sugar. And then also in your ingredients in the very bottom, watching out for partially hydrogenated oils. That's where your trans fats would come into your diet, because they actually can label a chip bag with 0 grams trans fats as long as it has 0.5 grams or less of trans fats. So just being sure to turn it over, that can help out. I know me personally, a reason that I'd use the food label is looking at the fat content or looking at the salt content, because I know I don't add much salt to my food, but if something is really salty, I'm going to taste it, and if I buy it, then I'm not going to want to eat it, and then I'm going to feel bad for throwing it away. So that would be something that I'd be watching for. But also being sure to eat breakfast. This is a big thing. Sometimes I hear people say, sometimes if they're trying to lose weight, or if they're feel like they're too busy to stop and get breakfast, is they'll skip breakfast. And breakfast is one of our main meals that gets us going in the morning, and it could be something as simple as what this picture was showing, those strawberries and blueberries and a little granola and a little milk, a little fast something. But it does get our bodies started in the morning. And one of the things, one thing with diabetics is that for them, if they start skipping meals, that's when their blood sugars start going up and down. But also eating out, one of the things is like maybe use a smaller plate. The restaurant meals, some of the appetizers are kind of dangerously high. I was watching the Today Show this morning, and they were talking about, I think it was loaded potato skins had 85 grams of fat total, and I was like, that's really disappointing. That would be like a whole meal there. So being cautious with that appetizer size item. Also sharing a meal. That's one thing I hear that people do, because I'll tell them when they get the meal, just cut that meal in half and have them bring a to-go box and just immediately put that other half in the to-go box. And that helps out not wanting to just keep on going on it. But I do know people who are like, I don't know if I'm gonna eat that tomorrow. I'm not a big leftover fan. So just knowing, maybe checking the restaurant website before going out to eat, that way you know how much is in that item. And then a small size if it's available. Jason's Deli. Actually, I promise I'm not promoting any one restaurant, but Jason's Deli had a lighter side salad. I noticed some of their items had a lighter side version of it. And I got a taco salad recently that was like the smaller size version. I felt full, but at the same time it felt like what a normal salad should be. And sometimes when I get the regular size, it's almost too much, and I tend to be like, well, I'm eating out, so I can do it this time, but then you don't feel so hot afterwards. But do remember that sometimes the lighter side costs a little more. But it's going to require public policy to change it, because they're not near changing that as of right now. But do y'all have any questions? I know I gave y'all a lot of material, and I'm going to have to look into that dessert, that piece of pie, because now I'm craving a piece of pie after flashing the desserts up there. But seeing what that actually compares to, I'm sure it's like a slim slice, but it doesn't have the shape like a brownie would. But thank y'all so much for waiting on me, and I hope y'all learned something while y'all were here. But if y'all have any suggestions about things you'd like to hear more about, I'm more than open to receive that. My last name is Porter, and I am in the hospital system, and y'all can also at the same time email me if y'all have anything.